Welcome back to the Two Stewards Show. I'm Mark here with Brent.
Hello, everybody.
And we're still talking about money. It seems like we never get tired of talking about that. But we've been talking about the money system, corrupt money. What would a world look like maybe with perfect money if such a thing existed?
I'm mostly listening, so I'm not necessarily talking all the time. But
no, you're going to talk this time, Brent.
I don't know. I had a sore throat for the last little while, and I feel like I've been a little bit unwell lately. I called my doctor, and then he's like, I don't know, he heard me on the phone, and he's like, okay, so, yeah, do you know what your temperature is? I'm like, no. He's like, do you have any symptoms? I'm like, yeah, sore throat, whatever. He's like, you need a puffer. I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you a prescription for a puffer. You're going to go pick it up. And I'm like, what? I'm like, you've been talking to me for 2 minutes on the phone, and now I need to go get some prescription thing. And
wow, maybe he's a really good doctor.
Yeah, so I don't know. He's very, it wasn't even FaceTime. You didn't even see me, so... Maybe that's because your phone is always, camera on. But
yeah.
Then I made the mistake in the hockey change room the other day. Like after the hockey game, I was like, "Is pneumonia contagious?" And everyone's like, "Whoa!" Like I don't think it is, but anyways, that's why my voice is a little bit raspier.
So your diagnosis is pneumonia.
Yeah, I don't know.
Your doctor's diagnosis.
I don't even know what is pneumonia. Like, is that good for you? No,
it's not good for you. No.
Oh man. Yeah. Anyways.
Okay.
But maybe just a refresher for people because
on your lungs or
well, no,
oh,
I need a refresher. I need a puffer. Let's do a puffer on the podcast here.
Okay.
Where we were, kind of what we're going through, and then we interrupted our series with this current event episode last time because you had this really good Twitter feed update, and you're like, I got to talk about this. So we kind of talked about how we talked about some of the properties of money. Money is a tool that people use to store the value of their time and labor, right?
Yep.
I think that's a good kind of summary of what money is. And then so a tool to store your value of your time and labor, and then also translate that or communicate that amongst people, right? So that could be done, in your local neighborhood, community, whatever, also globally, right? Internationally, between countries. So if we want money to actually achieve that purpose, so effectively store your value and communicate it, then it has to be all of these different properties that we talked about last time, right? Durable, divisible, recognizable, portable, scarce.
Yeah.
We went through those in a lot of detail, so if you haven't listened to that, maybe go back and you can bore yourself to death. I mean, get really excited and learn a lot about all the different properties of money.
Yeah.
But one that I kind of want to just touch on quickly as a refresher for people is scarcity.
Yeah.
Because the biggest, or one of the really important properties of money is that it's scarce. It has limited supply, or it's difficult to produce at least, right? And we saw that because we walked through a bunch of examples, and we kind of started with the historic monies, different objects or artifacts that other civilizations used in the past to store their wealth and communicate it or translate it to people.
Yeah.
And we saw also, and I think you gave a lot of good examples of this, what happens when new technology is introduced into those civilizations, right? And that affects the supply of the money, right? You can dilute the supply and what that does to the society. And then we also jumped into monetary metals, so like gold and silver, how those actually, they are expensive and costly to produce because you actually have to mine them out of the earth and expend real energy and time. So that's very costly. And as a result, the monetary system is basically rooted in nature, right? And for society, there's real world consequences if no gold is found, right? So if a miner goes out and actually spends time and energy and all this to get gold or silver out of the ground, and he doesn't find anything, well, he's going to have wasted time, wasted energy. Maybe he's going to go bankrupt, or he has a massive opportunity cost, right? He missed out on something else he could be doing.
Well, you see it all the time in the world of gold miners, right? If you're looking at, if you invest in penny stocks and like a lot of these gold stocks, this happens all the time, right? And there's a lot of shenanigans too.
Like prospecting, they're trying to find.
Yeah, and it's you'll have so you have the little company that does the prospecting, and they think they find something. There's no way they can develop it, right? But they're trying to hype it up to sell it to, right? If they get really good samples, then they're going to sell that to a bigger company who can actually produce.
And the value of that goes way up.
Yeah, and the reason for shows like on TV, I don't know what they're called, Gold Rush or all the shows about guys like finding gold up in the Yukon and stuff, right?
I'm completely unfamiliar with them, but I can imagine
typical quasi-reality shows, right? Nonsense. But the point is, it's like what you described that happens, right? There's excitement, and people invest money, and sometimes they win, and sometimes they lose, and more often than not, you lose.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're well capitalized, that's fine. But it takes a lot of time and energy. Like we're kind of just giving like an abstract, like this, if you don't, here's the consequences. You lose time and money. But like when you actually look into it, like there's I don't know. It's kind of exciting, right? You got the prospectors out there. And finding value, and if there is, it's
I think that's the point, right? Like they can't in gold miners, but also in these historic civilizations as well, and whatever monies they use, it wasn't gold, maybe it was beads or salt or shells or whatever. The whole point was that they couldn't just create it, right? It was always this effort that had to be done and expended, and then all of a sudden you get a result, and that result was, hey, you didn't find any gold, or hey, you got some gold, okay, it was worth it now. But what we talked about as well was fiat dollars, like the money we have now, that's not necessarily linked to gold. Those can be printed into existence with negligible cost, right? So there's no actual real world consequence to producing more money, or consequence. There is consequence, actually. There's no real world cost. Right?
Yeah, there's no effort.
So they're not difficult to produce. So
nobody's going out into the bush and like taking samples and I found some fiat.
Yeah, and you're like, good for you. I printed some too. But essentially, what's happening with fiat is that we're kind of getting unhinged from reality in that sense, right?
Yeah.
So in the gold mining example, you're very much linked to reality, right? You go out physically into the world, you go onto a plot of land, you have to secure that land, and then you have to mine and or prospect to see what's there. You have to test those samples, and then you have to whatever, right? There's a whole procedure for that. And it's a risk, right? Whereas fiat, it's like, what button should I push and how many decimal places? And it's like, we're kind of divorced from reality, right?
Yeah.
And with fiat, like the issuer of fiat, the guy who actually produces it, he's basically trying to decree value into existence, right? He's saying like, okay, like with gold, you're trying to make value come into existence too, but you have to expend energy to get it. But with fiat, it's kind of like, let there be money. And
you don't have to have any expertise.
No.
Really, right? If you get elected, you become and I can't think of any possible real-world examples where someone with no real-life experience of the world and how things work, would be elected and then recklessly spend money. I can't think of any examples, but I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah.
Now we're getting into another rare metal, iron. It's the irony. It's not true irony.
Oh, man.
But anyways, point is, if you're going to produce gold, there's a whole bunch of different...
Is irony hard to produce?
No. In today's circumstance...
It's plentiful, It's not a good money.
Yeah, no.
You don't want to store your wealth in irony.
No, but like we briefly talked about it. There's all these different steps.
We're actually transferring value to our listeners through irony.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Around the world.
Maybe we can we mint it somehow? Make some money off of this? But no, you have all these different specializations in gold mining, right? Like we talked about, you have the prospectors, you have the the geologists, you have the producers, you have the people transporting it, refining it, all this stuff. There's many years of training and expertise and blood, sweat, and tears that goes into this to produce something of value.
Yeah.
And it can't just happen like that. Whereas on the other side with fiat, you just need to get elected. And you could argue, like, okay, if it's a central banker, well, they need to have a degree in economics or whatever, right? And okay, fine, sure. But I mean, look at the state of the world now. Was that all that education really that helpful? But I will say, and so one thing we haven't really done, which maybe we should do at some point, is just get into modern monetary theory and do an episode on that. And
Tangent.
Yeah, it's more than a tangent. No, but actually, like the roots of MMT.
Yeah.
And because this is how our system kind of works now.
Yeah.
It's not like a true MMT.
Yeah.
There's it's been co-opted a little bit, but the
theory is very influential.
It's absolutely.
And pervasive.
And the theory is like, so we're talking about scarcity.
Yeah.
And our listeners should know that there are people who say, like, no, that's absolute bunk. Right? Good money does not have to be scarce.
Yeah.
And like here's the proof. We're doing this.
Yeah.
And if we use this system properly,
the proof is the proof.
Yeah, and if the proof is the proof, then you have the proof. One of the great philosophers of our time, Jean Chrétien. But they make, I don't know, on the face value, and it was a compelling argument, right?
Yeah.
The fact that our money is divorced from reality, that we don't have a gold standard, is proof that we actually don't need the gold standard. We don't need it to be based on anything.
That's what they say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And therefore we can print money. And as long as you just kind of keep the ratios and you can make the payments on the debt, like it's fine. Like who cares? Well, you never need to get rid of the debt.
From a Christian perspective, like that's taking a pretty bold, they're taking a pretty bold statement, right? You're basically saying, look, I can produce value by my words or by my speech.
Yes.
Right? Which is only something God can do, to be honest. Like God creates by his word, the power of his word, right?
Yeah.
And he can create, right? Make something from nothing. But with human beings, we're limited in that. Like nobody can just say something and then there it exists and its value, right? So with fiat money, it's almost like man's attempt to try to create something from nothing, right?
Yeah, it's a completely...
It appears as if you are creating something from nothing.
Yeah.
But it's more just a vain attempt to.
Yeah.
That
you're creating nothing from nothing.
Yeah, you're creating a mess from nothing.
That we can do. No, but it is a humanist philosophy, absolutely, right? It's the idea that there is absolute truth. We've talked about this before.
Yeah, I feel like I've got maybe halfway through my introduction, so this is good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We'll make it into a series.
Okay.
No, but just the idea of absolute truth, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about that's kind of out the window.
Yeah.
So we make our own truth. And this, I think that MMT absolutely fits into this narrative perfectly. We make our own truth. We don't need a money system tied to anything physical. Yeah. There doesn't actually need to be truth. The truth is what we say it is. And if we declare that we need more money in order to make the system work, and as long as, GDP increases and you monitor your interest rates, and like there is one divergence from MMT in that when interest rates go up, you're supposed to not print money. And that's absolutely not what has happened. Yeah. Oops. Oopsie. But other than that, we've all the major central banks and economists have been adherents to modern monetary theory. And I just want to say there is actually an alternative school of thought out there.
Yeah.
Like they're wrong and it's dumb, but it's out there. And I mean, but a lot of very educated people.
Yeah.
Like I think you got, and I don't know why, Brent, but you have Mark Carney's.
That was a book that was given to me.
Okay.
No, I put it at the back.
You should have gave it right to the
you
garbage.
Can't see it anymore.
Okay. But yeah, former Bank of Canada, Bank of England Governor Mark Carney, potentially the new federal Liberal leader, if you believe the scuttlebutt.
Yeah.
But anyways, there's a lot of so-called smart people out there who espouse this philosophy.
Yeah.
So we'll have to destroy that in a upcoming episode.
Okay. Well, okay. So I was going through my intro.
Sorry, Brent. Carry on.
And so if people think that they can decree value into existence with fiat money, there's kind of two problems with that, or two problems that I think come
Just two?
arise. Well, two that I thought of, because
Okay.
I'm only half as smart as you. So first of all, who gets the power to decree this value into existence, right? Well, I shouldn't say it's value, but it's more money, right? Like currency, decree things, money into existence. So that's one question, right? Like, how do we assign this power to, like, who gets the power? And there's an interesting quote from Murray Rothbard. He's an economist. And he says, inflation is legal counterfeiting, and counterfeiting is illegal. So the second thing is who actually receives the new money, right? So who can make it, who has the power to make it, then who actually receives it.
Right.
And that has a big impact too, right? Because whoever receives it can benefit quite largely from that, right? And we've talked about that when we talked about inflation. You can go back and listen to that too. How those who receive the money first can actually benefit.
Well, and I mean, okay, sorry to interrupt your thing again. Right? No, but real estate, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the key reasons for real estate is you are right next to the money printer.
Yeah.
So you actually can receive some of this newly created money.
Yeah.
Not saying it's like, that's great, but that's our system. Carry on, Brent.
Well, and then, so the way that works, obviously, is if you receive the money first, you can spend it on goods and services in the economy before everyone else gets the new money and before the prices rise, right? Mm-hmm. So you actually benefit from the new money more than someone else when it trickles down through.
And the prices are rising
Yeah.
because of this process.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's self-fulfilling.
Yeah, it's self-fulfilling, and then you always have to rely on more money being printed. So that inflation dilutes the value of savers. It actually rewards the accumulation of debt. And this is kind of where we want to go with this episode a little bit too, is talk about some of the incentives or structures that are kind of built into this fiat money system. And ultimately what this does is it rewards unsound behavior, bad behavior, right? Or at least it doesn't punish the bad behavior.
Yeah.
Right? Because like we said, there's no consequences to, producing the money. Consequences. There's no cost to produce the money.
Yeah.
Right? So you're kind of unhinged from reality in that sense. And you're rewarding bad behavior on the other side. So it's this really bad incentive structure that's kind of set up. So we're divorced from reality. And when you think about gold, like nature, or you think about nature in general, right? Like nature rewards us only when our toil is successful. Like you can't go out into a field and reap crops that you didn't sow, right? You have to actually follow nature's process. You have to actually do the work in order to get the benefit from it, right? I think you can think about relationships too, right? Like if you're just always trying to reap or take or harvest or get out of some relationship that you have without actually giving, right? How is that going to go? That's going to decline pretty quick, right? And there's going to be a lot of consequences to your actions. Similarly, markets, so like economic markets, they'll reward people only when they produce things that other people subjectively value, right? So if somebody tries to produce something that they think is valuable, but they put it on the market and nobody else values it, do you think they're going to have a booming company, or they're going to go out of business, right? So they're going to get the feedback from the marketplace really quickly, and it's going to be a harsh reality, right? It's going to be a wake-up call. Either they're going to have to change their business strategy or their ideas, or they're going to have to go out of business and find something else to do, right? And maybe work for someone else who actually is providing the market with value that others value. But yeah, like we said, fiat money, you reap where you do not sow. And then you could just kind of think about that, because we want to talk about some of the societal impacts kind of as examples of this. as we wrap up this series. So think about what happens when the consequences to your actions are not immediate, but they're delayed, right? So if you do something and you don't have immediate feedback, but you get feedback in 20 years or 50 years.
Yeah.
Right? Say, oh, that decision I made back when I was, young person, and now, okay, right? Usually what happens when your consequences are delayed, and the longer they're delayed, the less relevant they are to you until things really, hit you in the face, and it's a big wake-up call. Or
it's like eating McDonald's. I'm dealing with the
he's patting his belly
of eating McDonald's.
Well, you can also think too what happens when your action, like the consequences to your actions, can be covered over easily, right?
Yeah.
Or offset easily. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example of this, but
I joke about it, but diet is one of those things, right? You can just have a bad diet for a long time, and it slowly creeps up on you, and you get used to it.
Well, example of covering over it easily would be maybe you have a bad diet and you have some health challenges as a result, but you can take a drug or some sort of medication that will short term improve, right? So maybe the cost to do that, well, in this country is free because it's going to be financed by fiat, but
more or less, yeah.
Yeah, but let's say the cost to doing that is you really don't have to change your diet. You don't have to cook food. You don't have to grow food. You don't have to study food. You don't have to do any of that. You just open this bottle and you take one of these. And now the consequences to your actions of eating unhealthy, for example, are mitigated by or offset by this cheap, low-cost thing, right?
So
that attitude is what's in people's heads.
Yeah. So this is a pet peeve of mine, right? For I know you're partway through.
I don't have any pets.
Brent.
Oh, actually, we have a fish.
Yeah, peeves make great pets, though. They're always with you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. No, but doctors, and I'll use myself as an example.
You're a doctor?
No.
Oh. Okay.
No.
I was gonna say you look more like Santa Claus.
No, but exactly what you're talking about, right? So I'm still, jolly.
Yeah.
But I'm less jolly than I was, right? And I realized I got to lose some weight.
Right.
And I've got a new doctor now who's a little more direct. But my old one never really said you should lose some weight when it was clear that I should have.
Right.
Right. And have asthma and different problems. Right. Nobody ever said dude, just lose some weight and a lot of the stuff will go away.
Yeah.
Right. And because,
would they ever ask you, okay, what are you eating? How are you exercising? What are you sleeping? What are you
No. Everything seemed to point towards okay, you've got this issue. Here's a medication.
Yeah.
Right. And I resisted that because I knew that's not, no, you can't just, you take the medication and you feel worse because it does other stuff to you. There's an answer.
You're almost trying to find the easiest solution possible that quickly fixes the problem.
Yeah.
Or quickly covers over the problem without actually fixing what's causing the problem.
So many people like this who are on so much medication when you're maybe I'll hurt some feelings out there. I don't know. But we are such a fat people.
Yeah, man.
Right? Look at pictures of the 70s.
Yeah.
Before we had all the high fructose corn syrup and seed oils and all this stuff, right?
Well, that's an example of the food that we want to talk about as well.
But you so it's not, and I can't say it's
Here's
entirely our fault, but it's what we eat.
Calling everyone fat,
dude. It's so true. Well, and Europeans who come over here. Right? They're just
what is going on?
Yeah.
Okay.
People are so fat. Just go to Walmart in the States. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It's 10 times worse than here. But no, it's an example of what you're talking about. Nobody is willing, right? Because you have all this body positivity stuff and let's celebrate. No.
Yeah.
It's unhealthy.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not saying you're a bad person or whatever, and I'm in that camp. Yeah. I'm in the fat camp, okay? But I realize it's not healthy.
Yeah.
And why can't, but it's this whole idea of, absolute truth. No, my truth, I'm happy because I love eating pizza at McDonald's. So
I'm beautiful the way I am.
Yeah, it's yeah. But this whole idea that there is truth, there are problems, and that there are consequences, right?
Yeah.
In Genesis, I forgot about my mic.
This is a book of the Bible for people who aren't familiar.
Yeah, sorry. So right in Genesis, after the fall, so after Adam and Eve fell into sin, and God said, like, by the sweat of your face you shall eat bread. And maybe a little bit earlier, right? Cursed is the ground because of you, in pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. This idea that we are consigned to labor, and if we want to eat, we got to sweat. You got to work. You got to do something.
Expend energy.
Yeah.
There's a cost to what you. Yeah.
But as you said, when you can print money, we're kind of divorced from that reality, and
we aren't really actually divorced from it. I think that's a good thing to point out, right? That is still, like, the Genesis passage you read is still the truth.
Yes.
Right? It's just that we've attempted with fiat, we've taken this power, this kind of like divine power. We try to take that into our hands and produce value from nothing and ignore this, right?
Yeah.
So what we're actually doing is we're kind of subverting the truth, or we're not. But the consequences are still there, right?
Yeah, you're right.
So that's you can definitely see that that's going to like the truth always comes to light, right? Yeah. Eventually, it will be like, you know what? We actually do have to work to produce value. Right? We can't just say it exists and here you go.
We have to. I don't know. Look at we just talked about immigration and stuff, right? But you can't just import gajillions of people into a country and expect that to fix things. No, we actually got to look at the fundamentals and do some stuff. And you know what? Maybe if we had more babies right? Well,
that's
this is part of fiat thinking and fiat families or whatever, right? But I see it so often online. Maybe I should be online less.
Yeah, you should.
But where people
you should
talk
be working out, man, and like, maybe you should be a farmer and make quality food and then eat it.
Maybe I should. No, but where people talk about, like, it's just not possible to have a big family or just to have kids or whatever, because here's all the prerequisites. And thankfully there are people who are saying, like, no, that's bunk. You don't need to have all your ducks in a row before you start having kids. Like, it's just, and a lot of people actually,
although duck does taste pretty good.
It could be greasy. It's got to be done well.
Okay.
But I've also seen rejoinders from wealthy, successful people who are like, no, you know what? Having kids is forced me to get my butt in gear.
Yeah.
And I've made, every child that I've had, I've actually made more money.
Yeah.
Each successive time. So there's something to be said for, responsibility.
Yeah.
There. But yeah, the immigration crisis, like this, I don't know. This is maybe naive, not rooted in, like, maybe it wouldn't work or whatever. But, like, let's just have more kids.
Yeah.
Right. On one hand, we're saying, like, the earth is too populated. Right. Let's get rid of traditional families. Right. This whole push. Right.
Yeah.
And children and stuff. But then on the other hand, like, oh no, we need more people for the economy in this country. Well, like, figure it out, man. Have more kids. Be fruitful and multiply. That's a creation ordinance, and that'll never go away.
I don't know. My wife and I were talking about this a little bit, just reflecting on. Okay, we have 3 kids now, and we live in
You only have 3 kids.
1,000 square feet. Yeah, only.
That'd be in a trad chat.
Yeah. But reflecting on kind of the living accommodations that we're living in and what our parents or, like, previous generations would do versus other areas in the world, right? If you have 3 kids in some areas of the world, like, you're not living in 1,000 square feet, right? That's unheard of. Or if you are, you're living there with a lot of other people, right? So it's kind of a good thing to reflect on too. Just, are you content? And can you live, like, what is the meaning of life? I think we have that kind of in our head that we need to have, like, a big space in our own house and all this, right? And like, I think it's good to zoom out and reflect on, okay, be content with where you have and serve, right? And that's a call of Christian to be content, and then also serve other people with what you have, right? You've been given this, let's serve other people. Mark's getting chilly. It's probably because of your probably
maybe
because
I got
of your
pneumonia
poor
from
diet.
you.
Yeah.
No, I have extra insulation. I shouldn't be cold. No,
See, there's always unintended consequences that you're not aware of. It's probably because you're printing money or something.
in my basement.
Yeah.
No, but you talk about kids too, right? What is that? What are we doing to our kids? Because I've had the same conversation with my wife, right?
Yeah.
Especially when we have, like, I don't know, one sick kid climbs into bed with us. Okay, fine. You're 3. That's okay.
Yeah.
Then the dog jumps on the bed, and then like another kid comes into the room like, I'm this or that, and can I sleep in your bed? We're like, no, get out of here, right? Because
But in some countries, that's their.
Well, but we have the idea that, if you have a kid, this kid must have their own bedroom with its appropriate set of
with
toys.
a massage chair and like
exactly, right?
Yeah, little sauna.
Yeah, all this stuff. And like,
tennis court.
So on one hand you can say, like, you're beating yourself up unnecessarily. You don't need all this space for these kids and all the toys and all of that. But what are you doing to the kids? You're setting this expectation for them now that they have to have things a certain way, and they could never have any hardship in their life. And this has like been a big topic in our house lately, right? Like, no, guys, a little bit of hardship.
And
like,
during
this
hardship?
isn't even hardship that you have to share toys or like whatever thing. I mean, they're young, right?
Yeah,
9 and under. So, not beating them up too much, but just trying to get them to understand that they have it so much better than many places, and that a little bit of hardship, like, it's good for you.
It's good for you, folks. All right, Mark. No
Sorry,
more
Brent,
sweets. And all right, so halfway through the intro here.
Okay.
So think about what happens when the consequences to your actions are not immediate but delayed, right? We talked about that, and they can be covered over easily or offset at no cost. Also think about what happens when the consequences to your actions aren't felt by you, but they're felt by others, right? And that's kind of like the monetary example where if you're printing money and someone else or someone gets it, like one group gets it before the other people, they're kind of benefiting and the other people are suffering, right? So a lot of the times, like, the people who are making the problem happen aren't feeling the consequences of it. It's passed on to everybody, or it's passed on to people who hold their money in savings accounts, right? So they're getting diluted, whereas the people who might be printing the money own assets and they're not feeling the pain, right? But if that's maybe the monetary example, but like, think about that in other areas of your life, right? If you make a decision but you don't feel the consequences, someone else does, and you might not know about it directly, or it might come to light later. There's no feedback to you. Hey, you should stop this action, and it's having consequences over here. Like, you're really, hurting these people. Maybe you are aware of it, but you don't care too, right? It's not affecting my life. It's just affecting them. And we talked about the immigration with the universities too, right? If you think about them, they're getting lots of money. They don't care if the students are, not necessarily care. Maybe some of them care, but like, to them, the fact that the students have to find living accommodations and are on the street, that's their problem, right? Like, they make lots of money. So, right? That's an example, right? Where the consequences of the actions are put on other people. And that's kind of what is incentivized by having unsound money. And that's kind of scary.
Well, I mean, I think it already exists in our culture. We talk about this separation from truth as an ideal. So we can't blame it all on unsound money.
You wouldn't say,
but
like,
it's a reinforcement. It reinforces it. Right?
It's like a reinforcer or a reinforcing thing. What's a good word for that?
A feedback loop. I'm not sure. For some reason, I'm thinking of the Transformers, the robots. Is there like an alternative, reinforcers?
Okay.
But it's important to note that it's not, everything is not the fault of fiat money.
No.
right? Everything is the fault of
The government? No.
no. I mean,
Sin. Yeah.
rejecting God, rejecting truth, and how that works out in various ways. But the money system we have is only making things worse.
Yeah.
And can lead to new problems as well.
So
I blame your pneumonia on fiat money.
Oh, my fiat lungs.
Don't worry, suffering is good for you.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe we give some examples, right? Because we said we were going to get to this, but fiat politics. So how might we say fiat? That's really just let there be, right? But how might the unsound money that we currently operate on impact politics, and not just the money, but also like these attitudes that you're saying, like the values that have been changed? Obviously, sin is at the core of it, but if incentive structures set up such that there are no immediate consequences to your actions, they can be felt by other people. I can produce value at no cost, or at least attempt to. What does that do to politics? And that's kind of a scary thing too, because politics is it's governing the people, right? And you have a lot of power when you're in politics. So like maybe you can ask the question, well, who's getting attracted to politics?
Yeah.
I mean, it's always been a position of power, so you're always attracting people who might be interested in power. But if you have the power to create money out of nothing, that almost becomes a magnet for a certain type of people.
Yeah, I mean, I think it leads to an increase in statism.
Right.
The idea of the state as this entity that is a thing unto itself, as opposed to we have a grouping of people who live in a land, and maybe there's a common bond because there's a king or there's some ruler, or there's some sort of common interest, but the emphasis is on those people, and they got to take care of themselves, and they will band together for certain things, as opposed to the state as an all-encompassing organism that affects like we have now, essentially affects every aspect of our lives and regulates every aspect of your life. And that becomes a self-reinforcing thing as well, right? We've seen the rise of bureaucracy. I've seen some charts that have looked at bureaucracy in since 1971.
Are they interesting charts, or?
I think so. Probably 95% of the population wouldn't.
Right.
But like in the medical field, for example, right, the absolute rise of bureaucracy since 1971.
So we don't have more healthcare workers. We have the administration and the bureaucracy around the industry. Yeah.
Because we think of, the politicians are the ones in power. Really, the bureaucracy, those are the halls of power. Because politicians come and go, and they can make decisions and they can do things, but that bureaucracy stays forever. And that person working in public works or whatever, right, might have a 40-year career.
Yeah,
they hold the keys. Quite often, and our bureaucracy is like massively bloated.
Well, it's interesting because it dovetails with what we said last episode about immigration, right? Where we had the 446 or whatever thousand new people who were hired into the government roles.
Yes.
It's 11% growth in the government sector for jobs, and then 3% in the private sector. And that just contributes to the bureaucracy. But to go along with that too, if government's in control of the money, they're kind of set up they're incentivized to spend, right?
Yeah.
And they're also incentivized to get into debt, right? Because bigger debt under a fiat money system is rewarded, right? If you have debt, you can buy assets, right? So you benefit from increased money printing. So in a sense, like the government just is continuously spending.
Yeah.
And they have to continuously spend, like we talked about before too, about servicing the debt.
Yeah.
But they're also kind of rewarded for that behavior, right? And that's something that ignores future consequences as well, right? If you're spending, like, where does that actually come from, right?
Yeah, like who is creating wealth?
Yeah, where?
Right.
And the other thing is they voted in based on their spending promises too, right? You'd be pretty unpopular politician if you said we're going to cut, or if we're going to not spend, or we're going to spend on the wrong things. But if you say we're going to spend very much on very many things, you have a better chance. So
yeah, I mean, it's
in that sense, it's like this big circular kind of wheel too, the self-fulfilling feedback
and it doesn't
loop
really matter. Whether you like, if you look at the U.S. as an example, because it's polarized. You got Republicans and Democrats, essentially, right? Does it matter who's in power as far as
no, not really. With the system money goes, that works, no,
right? Because Republicans will tend to cut taxes and spend, and Democrats will tend to, in very broad generalizations, increase taxes and spend. The common theme there is they're all spending.
Yeah.
Spend. Unsustainably.
Yeah.
They do
it's almost like they're ignoring any long-term pain, and they're trying to increase short-term pleasure. And that's scripturally in the Bible. The Bible talks about, seeking pleasure and how destructive that is, right?
Yeah.
Our human hearts are just wired to seek pleasure, and almost when you put that natural tendency or that sinful tendency of our hearts on a government level, and okay, now seek pleasure on behalf of the nation, and here's an unlimited money printer. Do you think they're going to try and put that at bay and, stop the money printer and then, choose long-term pain instead, or long-term benefits?
Yeah.
Usually not, right?
Well, you mentioned it last time about, once you sort of create a special interest group, it's really hard to get rid of it, right? So the government gives money to a group of people who have a special interest. Well, that group will never go away now because they're dependent on that money. They're going to lobby for that money. And if you make the decision to cut funding to that group, you're going to be very unpopular.
Yeah.
And so we have like a million special interest groups.
Well, okay, I have in my notes here, we're supposed to talk about the positive side of things.
Positive schmositive.
I don't know. I also don't have anything below that. So maybe we could talk about the next thing on our list.
Oh, man. It is, well, I mean, a lot of this is just by virtue of what we're talking about. It's kind of negative because we can see the negative effects of the system that we're in. Yeah. And when it comes to finances, that's when people notice.
Right.
So I was, talking about this the other day with my wife, and we talk about I try not to be too political, but our current government, right? There's been it's just facts that the's been
does your wife actually listen to you at this point, or
it helps her get to sleep.
Okay.
No, but like corruption scandals, for example, there have been a bunch.
Yeah.
People just don't care.
Yeah.
The majority, they don't care.
When it comes to finances being wasted or stuff like that, it's...
Yeah, like whatever. Or just outright like theft or whatever. But
it's almost
we've
like...
seen that in polling numbers. It hasn't... These things like, whatever.
Yeah.
People don't care. What people care about, and this is reflected in the polling numbers now for the current government, is when it affects them financially. When they can see it. All of a sudden, all your other ideals kind of go out the window.
Yeah.
Because when you see homeless encampments all over, when maybe you've got to use the food bank.
Yeah. You can't afford a house.
Yeah. Yeah. When it like really hits you, and it's like almost too late, guys, but that's when people care. And that's when they're... and that's why we're talking about it, because we see all these negative it's very plain for everyone to see now. Not just us, not talking theoretically about certain things, but everybody can see it.
Pain is information, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there.
You mean pain. Okay. Well, another example of this is fiat education. That could be maybe an episode in of itself, but we can chat about it quickly because that's another area where unsound money can have a big effect, and we have seen that too ever since we've kind of abandoned sound money principles. and we've centralized the power to print money in central banks and the government, right?
Yeah.
You also have consequences flowing to education sector, and you're going to have like one example would be loans to students, right?
Yeah.
So now students, okay, with education, it's interesting because it sounds good, right? Like you don't necessarily want to have an uneducated population. That sounds bad, right?
What do you mean?
Well, folks, not only is he in the fat club,
He's in the dumb club.
yeah. So education is kind of one of these things that it makes total sense to fund that, right? If we're going to fund something like maybe healthcare as well, right? If we're going to fund something with the free money that we have, why don't we do education? Because like we don't want people to be uneducated, dumb, maybe dangerous even, right? We want them to contribute to society and the economy. So it's worth investing in making quality education.
You're saying this as the devil's advocate, right?
Well, yeah, I'm kind of saying like that's the thought, and it's easy to go along with it, right? Well, it's easy to go along with that thought, right? Because it sounds good, right? But when you start looking at how the dynamics actually work, when you take the power to print money and put it in the government's hands, and now all of a sudden they're giving loans to students and making it very easy for them to get money or cheap money to go and spend it on education. Well, does that increase the quality of the education or decrease the quality of the education? Does that mean maybe more people who wouldn't necessarily go to school are going to school and they're not, oh man. And then the other thing too is and then the government can directly subsidize by way of grants and research grants, specific universities or colleges with specific programs for specific reasons. And you're taking out like the academic part of it that used to be what the universities were for, and you're putting it kind of in this government's hands, right? Say, well, where should we direct our brain power and our research for the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years, right?
So there's a couple issues with this type of thinking. So number one, the value of education.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not value. I mean, I will say it's lost
everyone
a lot of its value.
can go to school for no cost.
Yeah. So there is the underlying idea that one idea anyways, that a lot of the problems in the world could be solved if everybody was more educated. And like educated in what way, in what culture, in what ideology, right?
Yeah.
There's a clue right there. But if we just educated everybody more, we would have fewer problems.
Yeah.
We would have less problems. It's bad grammar. It's a little joke there. And like that, it's not true, right? Our problem is sin.
Yeah.
And there's no amount of education that can save us
fix that.
From that, right? Other than reading your Bible and educate yourself that way. But the idea, this is part of, again, this humanist ideal that we just need to get everybody more educated, and then things will be better. We can work towards a brighter future with more education, right? And
eventually get to the utopia?
Yeah.
Yeah,
we can if we just educate everybody more. Right. And so the origins are bad. B, it's not true.
Yeah.
And the education system now is I don't know. Do we just need to completely abolish it and start over? Because it's so divorced from reality.
Yeah. The other part that's divorced from reality is like if the quality of the education's not there.
Yep.
Right. There's no consequence to that. Because people can go to school, like if it's a free market and money's hard and you go to school and you get an education at the school and you go out to get a job and you can't get a job, right? It's like, well, that looks bad on the university, but that's not what's happening, right? Now the providers of education don't have to worry about the quality of the education. Yeah. They can just basically, get the free money, educate, and then these people go out into the marketplace. They can't get jobs, but there's no. They can get jobs in government
At
industries well, in government subsidized industries that promote this stuff. It's just so divorced from reality. I don't even know how to say it.
No, but you're right? The bureaucracy is self-feeding.
Like public schools can't go out of business.
No.
If you think about that.
Well, and universities can't now either.
No. So you're producing a product, but you can never go out of business by producing a bad product, right? That seems kind of like, wait a minute. And especially when the product is educating children or even adults or whatever, right?
Well, so there was, I think it was Laurentian, maybe. One of these universities went under and took a bunch of tuition money with it. So the government stepped in and said, we can't allow this to happen. Post-secondary educations are now exempt from the the Insolvency Act or whatever. So basically, post-secondary educations can't go bankrupt because they could before. And so there were some consequences, but now that's gone.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And Jordan Peterson has talked about the rise of the administration in post-secondary education specifically, and what a blight that has been, right? So the universities used to be run essentially by the professors, and there was some admin that helped them do it.
Yeah.
But it's the other way around now, and it's the admin that runs universities. So again, this massive bureaucratic class that has power, that calls the shots. And we see the results.
But they're that's because they're accountable to who, right? They're not accountable to the people they're educating. They're not accountable to their parents, right? They're not accountable to society. They're accountable to the source of funding.
Yeah.
And that source of funding is flawed because it's coming out of thin air.
Yeah.
Right?
Some of it, universities do get a lot of bequests and grants from companies as well.
I wonder what that statistic is, if it's gone down or not. But
yeah, but you see the result with this sort of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion mindset that has just destroyed the quality of education in North America, anyways. And we were talking about some of the presidents of major universities who are absolutely unqualified, and the only reason they are there is because of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Certainly not because of any kind of merit. And okay, that's a whole other episode. But the point is, having a university degree now doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah,
anybody can get one. Almost anybody, unless you're too favored on the, in the intersectionality chart, right? Maybe you can't even get into college or university now. But I would say it's almost meaningless, and I wouldn't send my kids to a university unless they were going specifically for
something tangible,
something like the medical, like they want to be a doctor or a nurse or maybe a lawyer, something that's where you get that training. But other than that.
Well, okay, I got this book here, The Fiat Standard. This is by Seyfuddin Ammous. I think we've chatted with him or about him before. We'll have to have him on.
Safer than Ammous?
Yeah, Seyfuddin Ammous. And he has this interesting example of the education system in Egypt and how economic distortion caused by public financing of education is just making a mess of their system over there. So he says in Egypt, they have an entire private education system that takes place in the afternoon. So you have a public system and a private system. And the teachers, so there's a private education system that takes place in the afternoon where the teachers are paid a decent wage and the students pay a decent tuition fee, leading to productive learning. A friend told me that in some cases, entrepreneurs would rent the public schools to host the classes, leading to the surreal situation of the same students and the same teacher meeting in the same classroom twice on the same day. In the morning, the government is paying and the teacher is getting negligible pay, and so no education happens. But in the afternoon, in the privately organized school system, actual education takes place. Is that unreal?
Wow.
That's unreal.
Incredible.
All right, folks, we're here, but nothing's happening. And this afternoon, we're going to learn stuff.
Yeah, we're going to watch a movie this morning.
Yeah. But it's a little talk about private schooling versus public schooling as a breakdown of statistics of, in Washington, D.C., I guess. The average private school tuition is $23,959, and the average DC government school spends $31,280 per student. So
Isn't
the
that
government's
incredible?
spending 31 grand, and the tuition cost is 23 grand. So like tuition's probably not just the cost. There's probably something else in there. Whatever.
Well, that covers the whole running of the school.
Yeah.
Administration, janitors,
Yeah.
like
Transportation,
the facilities.
if they do that.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot to running a school for sure. But
Well, and again, it's bureaucracy.
yeah.
That is exactly where the waste is. But Brent, are you
gotta
done
cut
your
it off.
intro by now?
Yeah, we're almost done the intro. So next time.
So we've talked about the problems with our current system, a lot of doom and gloom, fiat money. Like, what do? Do we go back to the gold standard? We've talked a little bit about that too, right?
Is that possible, or is that reasonable?
We're in a digital age now.
Yeah, I don't know. We need to explore the next option, man.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, gold could, we've talked about it, and there's a lot of people that are gold bugs now, and who say we should go back on some kind of gold standard, or at the very least, put your money in gold, because this system is going to crash and burn, and it's corrupt, and they agree with us on most of these points. But we've talked about a few things out, like it's not practical.
Yeah.
And you could do a gold-based
It's not portable.
electronic currency or something, but you're back to the whole central planning and trust of the central authority to hold that gold, and not fractionally bank it, right? Lend it out. So, I mean, all that to say that we think there's an alternative out there, and this will not solve all the problems in the world, because as we pointed out, the issues that we have in the world and fiat money are all symptoms of a bigger problem, right?
Yeah.
Like denial of the truth, the pushing away from God and from what He has instituted for us. So, I'm not going to solve everything, but there is an answer, at least to the financial system, right? And that answer is Bitcoin. We've mentioned it before.
Yeah.
Here and there in different podcasts, we've talked about it. And I think we're going to spend some time going through what a system would look like in a Bitcoin world. And there's a lot of people out there who maybe have heard of Bitcoin and are like, what is this? Like, what is this thing? I've heard of this. It's a scam. It's like, there's nothing backing it.
I think at this point, a lot of people, or pretty much everyone, has heard the word Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But do they understand what it means or what it is, or how much have they invested in studying it or figuring it out? I guess that's the other thing, right? Because, it is a scam, Mark. Those cryptocurrencies I saw on the news, man.
Yeah, so there's a lot to delve into, but maybe, I think that'll be our next
next year, the whole year. At this rate, it might be.
It could be, but I mean, it's interesting. This is essentially kind of a real estate.
Real estate and money and economics.
Yeah,
from a Christian.
We kind of started off real estate, but once you look behind the curtain and you look at the money system and how it works, and there's a very real. I have a real worry, anyways, that the system's going to collapse at some point.
Yeah.
Right, and we've given examples of how it's collapsed in other countries.
You and I are both just average people trying to figure out what's going on, right?
Yeah.
I'm average, anyways, but
I'm below average, Brent.
Okay. Shoot. We're trying to figure out what's going on, and we're trying to steward our wealth, right? And as Christians, we're looking at this going, well, we've been blessed with so much, right? Mm-hmm. And no matter how much you have, it's still more than you deserve, right? And we're called to try and learn and figure out what is the best way to use what we've been given in this world, right? And to use it for good, and so that's what we're trying to figure out on this podcast and study and hopefully add value to people. But moving forward into next year, 2024, we want to definitely look at the concept of Bitcoin and what it is and what, does it offer anything that the other monies that we've talked about don't offer?
Yeah.
Is it legit? Is it a hoax?
Number one, is it ethical? As Christians, can we use it?
Yeah.
And if it is,
there's so many angles.
Spoiler
here.
alert, we think that it is.
Well, so many angles to this topic that
Yeah.
we have to cover and we have to talk about. We should even have guests on to talk about this.
Yes, we have a number of guests lined up
Okay.
that are smarter than us.
Ooh, this
To
is going
help
to be
us
exciting.
learn about this. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, next year's going to
I
be a good
think
year.
you are. Yeah.
All right,
So-
call all your friends. Tell them to listen to the
Tell
Two
both of
Stewards
them.
Show. Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for being on this journey with us this year, folks. And until next time,
Steward your wealth wisely. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Two Stewards Show. If you like my voice better, click subscribe.
and if you like my voice better, click share.
If you like both, give us a 5-star rating.
To interact with the show, feel free to reach out at hello@twostewards.ca.
We'll see you in the next episode. In the meantime, steward your wealth wisely.